I'm Leah Small, and this is Virginia Voices, where you will hear first-person stories from people most affected by current politics, policy, and economic trends. We give Virginians outside the news a full stage to explore their thoughts and experiences beyond a few sound bites or paragraphs in a daily news story. Virginia Voices is a project of the Virginia Center for Investigative Journalism at WHRO. Former Virginia Beach NAACP branch president Georgia Allen successfully changed the local election system in Virginia Beach after decades of underrepresentation for the city's Black residents. In 2021, Allen was one of two plaintiffs to win a federal suit against Virginia Beach that ruled the city's former voting system violated the U.S. Voting Rights Act by denying minority voters a fair say in elections. In most cities, people living within voting districts elect city council members from within their districts to represent them in local office. But Virginia Beach had a system in which council members must win elections citywide instead of solely within their districts. This voting system prevented the election of candidates preferred by voters of color, plaintiffs argued. A federal district court barred the city from voting at large, except for mayor, and approved 10 new voting districts. The result was the election of the most diverse city council in Virginia Beach history in 2022. After legal challenges to the decision, the Virginia General Assembly voted this year to keep in place the city's new election system. We're here with Georgia to talk about what the win meant to her as a longtime civil rights activist in Virginia Beach. Welcome, Georgia.
Thank you. And with regards to what it meant to me, it meant that my kids, my grandkids, my great-grandkids, and those yet unborn really have a fair opportunity to run for office first and foremost, but also a real opportunity to get elected to office without it costing them an extreme amount of money. And so that was important.
And you grew up in Virginia Beach, right?
Absolutely. I grew up during the segregation era. So I've seen Virginia Beach for a number of decades, actually 7. I've been here a long time. And so growing up in segregated Virginia Beach, I can remember they weren't even grocery stores. They were just country stores that you would go to. And you notice how when you went to the country stores, that they always took the white customers first. That was very prominent during that period of time. And even as things changed and we got the mall, there were still stores that were not necessarily that friendly toward you.
How does that make you feel, white customers going first, seeing your parents waiting?
Well, for the longest time, I didn't always recognize it because a lot of times when I went to the store with my mom, she would keep us busy, are you sure you want that or whatever? And I ultimately, later in life, realized, I said, you know what? My mom was creative. She was making sure that we didn't experience it as much as some of the other people. And my father was a pastor, okay? So we lived a very conservative type life. So she was not a person that would, create any type of, real pushback. She would try to do things in a manner that, kind of balance things out. She was not one that would necessarily be like her daughter, like I have become. But watching her over the years, she was very strong and she was very firm, but she was not a loud vocal person. But she definitely took care of business when necessary.
When you finally realized, I'm guessing as an adult, that she kept you busy in the grocery store to shield you, did you ever bring it up with her?
So it wasn't until after she passed away, and I began to sit back and I began to look at a lot of the old civil rights movies and documentaries and stuff like that. And then I thought back to when I would go to some of the little country stores. I would get ready to go up to the counter. She says, no, come here a minute. And it just hit me. I said, you know what? My mom was being very tactical. I mean, and that's the difference in seniors of that age group. They were tactical, they were strategic, and they watched everything that was going on around them, and they, maneuvered through this horrible system in a manner that kept their dignity and allowed you not to actually have to feel the challenges and the racism that existed. Now they could have fought every battle, and I think that's what helped me as I got older. And people would say, "Well, why don't you address this? Or why don't you go after that?" And I always say, I pick and I choose my fights. I'm not going to fight every fight. I'm going to pick and choose because I've picked to win. I don't pick to just have a fight.
So, what was the first fight? When did you put the gloves on getting into city politics?
Well, actually, what occurred, even getting involved in civil rights, was I had an older sister. She was 4 years older than me. She was like, "Why don't you join the NAACP?" And I was like, "Why?" "Well, my friend, she's a member." And so I joined the NAACP, and I bet you it wasn't 6 months that my sister actually participated and never came back. And I ended up finding my home and finding my passion and ultimately stayed with the NAACP. There was just something about what they were doing in the civil rights community that drew me in. And I've been there ever since. And I stayed as president for about 10 years. And then after I was no longer president, I remained with the organization. I always found a place in the NAACP. And so currently I'm the first vice president, and I'm also the religious affairs person. I would say our initial fights was just trying to teach and develop our young people. Later, one of the things that I pushed for in the city of Virginia Beach was fairness in the hiring practices when it comes to the police and fire department. There's this father, and his father was the head of the New York Police Department, and now his children are also members of the police department, and they all look the same, and their friends are members of the police department. And so we noticed that in the city of Virginia Beach. In our case, we have a lot of Stalleys in the city of Virginia Beach. And so they're House of Delegate members, they were senators. And so all the families look the same. And then when they hire friends of friends. Well, if you don't affiliate or associate with other people, then the only people that you're going to hire are people who look like you. And so the first thing I did was I went after how they were hiring for contractors. I had an excellent economic development chairperson at the time, a guy by the name of A. Bruce Williams. He was phenomenal because he had a background in marketing and finance and all of this. So he literally went through the city's budget and how they spent their money.
Digging into that cronyism, whether it was intentional or not, within the police department and other parts of public service, what were the results of your investigation, and did you successfully push for change, and how?
We did. They wanted a brand new convention center, the big convention center. And so we were able to get a contractor, at the time it was called TechCon, to come in, and he was the one that developed a process to identify a more diverse group of contractors, both sub and prime contractors, to work on the convention center. And so we began to inch by inch make some changes in Virginia Beach, to the point that TechCon ultimately got the contract to build a marble plaza here at the town center. Never had been done in the history of Virginia Beach to have a contractor to actually put in a plaza like that. And so
When was that completed?
I want to say the early 2000s. And so we worked on changing contractor. We worked on hiring practices, and that was throughout the city. We started having more department heads that were Black, both male and female. We started seeing some changes in the police department. Still, we got a lot of work to do.
What roadblocks did you come up against?
Oh, yeah. And mostly They were polite roadblocks. We are truly trying. We just can't get anybody that want to work here in the city of Virginia Beach. We're reaching out. So we ask, well, where are you reaching out? Well, people who work here, they have friends. They have friends. They have people that they went to school with. And so they've asked them. But we find that a lot of people, in order to be on the police department, you can't have any type of police record whatsoever. They use things to push back against in a manner where it came across that we're not trying to keep people off the police force or the fire department. They're just impediments that are preventing them from becoming police officers or whatever. So we heard that a lot.
So, your fight for voting rights. How did you get into that in Virginia Beach, changing the election system?
Well, it started out with a young lady by the name of Latasha Holloway, and she was concerned that her children were being mistreated in the school system. So she went to the school system to try to get assistance. She couldn't get assistance within the school that her children were attending. She couldn't get assistance from the school board itself. She then went, of course, to her next elected official. And because of the way we were structured, you could run in the district that you must live in, but the whole entire city was able to vote for you. That presented a huge problem because we found out that there could be areas where there were like 3 people living within blocks of each other because of this at-large district mechanism. So if the line was drawn right here, and this is District 7 and this is District 8, they're 2 blocks apart. They're just on the other side of the street. Then you have your large seats, so you can have another 4 people because they can live, another 2 more people because they can live anywhere in the district. And so now you got 4 people living strategically in one area of the entire city. And so once we looked at that and found that we had so many people who were all living together, that means technically you really didn't have representation depending upon where you lived. And so she couldn't get an assistance. So she then decided that she would go ahead and sue the city. She started talking to people and everything. Well, I signed on to the lawsuit once it got started.
You identified this at-large voting as an issue well before Miss Holloway even.
Yes.
We should note that.
Yes. Okay. This has been an issue for quite some time, even back to the 1990s.
And you've worked on it.
And I've worked on it. So in the year 2000, there was a census done. Okay. Every 10 years. So then in around 2001, we went out, we fought for representation, but we went before the General Assembly. Okay. One of the things that I did is I ran for office in 2005, but I ran for the House of Delegates. And the person that was in the House of Delegates had been there, I want to say, probably close to 17 years. And I did very, very well. I got close to 40% of the vote. As a first-time candidate, I probably had $5,000. He probably had $100 and some $1,000. So it was obvious that the people themselves wanted something different. And so after that, in 2008, I ran for city council. Of course, I ran again against a longtime incumbent. But during that period of time, we were working, trying to get the General Assembly to take a look at how Virginia Beach was set up with regards to the election system. And so we went before the General Assembly to try to get them to change. In 2010, of course, there was another census. Whenever there's a census, that's an excellent time to have a redistricting. So we pushed forward again. In 2011, we then started a group called Community Coalition for a Better Virginia Beach. And we pulled all of the non-white groups together. We looked at how the voting system was working. We looked at the fact that over the years, we never had ever re-elected one Black person to city council. We elected them one time, but over the years, never had a Black person been reelected to city council. Never in the history of Virginia Beach. We spoke before the General Assembly. We spoke before city council trying to get them to make a change. And then in 2019, that's when Latasha Holloway filed her lawsuit. And so when she filed the lawsuit, she was on it by herself. And it wasn't looking like it was a strong enough lawsuit. Well, you know how sometimes God puts you in a certain place at a certain time. Didn't realize running for office might be beneficial to a lawsuit years later. But what it turned out to be is it showed that a favorite candidate of the community could not get elected, whether it was in a district, on a state level, which is a much larger district, of course, than your city level districts, or whether it was in a citywide election, that it was very difficult for the community choice to get elected. And that was the issue. We ultimately won the lawsuit and everything, and it opened the doors. A lot of times when people see our community fighting for issues, they don't recognize how valuable that fight can be for them as well. I would talk to people, and I said, you do recognize as a white person that your son, daughter, or grandchildren are now able to run for office without it costing them $100,000, $200,000, $500,000 just to run for a seat on city council.
Because these at-large campaigns are super expensive.
Very, very expensive. So we're a diverse city council now, but we're diverse in age as well. We're diverse in ethnicity.
There were legal challenges after you both won the lawsuit.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us about what happened?
The city did appeal it. And then after the city appealed everything, it became moot because the General Assembly said there will be no more at-large voting on local elections in our local cities and counties.
And that happened during this General Assembly session.
That happened in the previous General Assembly session. Is when they voted into law that there would not be the at-large system.
This new diverse council, almost the most diverse in Virginia Beach history, I think four
Yes.
Black council members.
We have 3 women and 1 male.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
And did you notice as an observer the debates, the priorities, what got done? Did business change in light of that new diverse council?
Well, I think there were questions and pushback on things that probably would not have had pushback. Now, did you get everything done? And this is what I have to get our young people, and I say young people a lot because it's a long haul.
What's your next battle?
That is the next battle. Actually, it's an ongoing battle. We still have to push for fairness in our public service. We still have to push for fairness as it pertains to the new UE 111, the new union of public servants who are trying to get better salaries, better benefits, and things of that nature. I'm hoping to be able to have an impact on the children. And I get this all the time. We need you on city council. I said, no, I need to be where the generations are growing. Because if I can impact the children, then I ultimately impact the citizenry because they're going to be making decisions for me when I become 80 or 90 years old. So I want to have an impact on how they are taught.
You've gotten your overall, I would say, life philosophy from your mom in many ways. Your approach to what fights you pick and your advocacy. What do you think she would say about what you've accomplished and where you have to go?
She would say, are you doing what you want to do? And do you feel good about what you have done? And Do you see a future of what you intend to do? And will that make things better?
And your answer would be?
And my answer would be I'm absolutely doing exactly what I want to do, and that is to have an impact on not just the Black community, but have an impact on the community at large. And I say the community at large because I think we do ourselves a disservice to sit here and have these infighting things because it's not moving us. It's not moving us where we need to go. And so I would say to her that I want to continue to try to improve things. Can't fix it all, but I do make sure that I'm working toward improving things.
I'm host and producer Leah Small. Virginia Voices is a project of the Virginia Center for Investigative Journalism at WHRO. Executive producers are Christopher Tyree and Lewis Hansen. The podcast is edited by Chris and myself. Virginia Voices is made possible through a grant by Virginia Humanities and donors like you. You can read the story and see photos from today's show and past episodes on our website, vcij.org, which is linked in our bio. We hope that if you like these conversations, you'll subscribe to Virginia Voices, where we'll continue to share the stories of Virginia citizens whose lives are impacted by the news of the day. On behalf of everyone here at the Virginia Center for Investigative Journalism, thank you for your time and support.